Reform UK's recruitment drive has begun to resemble a political version of the January sales. Everything must go, all former Conservatives welcome, and no questions asked about past allegiances, prior contradictions, or inconvenient voting records. So the arrival of Ben Bradley, once Conservative MP for Mansfield, briefly a rising star, briefly a mayoral hopeful, and for a time the leader of Nottinghamshire County Council, is simply the latest addition to a swelling catalogue. By any measure, his defection carries more symbolic weight than the strategic value, yet it speaks volumes of both Bradley himself and the party he now joins. The Reform UK insists that he's not morphing into the Conservative Party in exile, but the arithmetic tells its own story. 22 ex-Tory MPs have now made that jump, and at this point Reform begins to look less like an insurgent movement and more like a halfway house for a generation of Conservatives who lost their seats, lost their bearings, lost patience with their own party, lost their mind. Numbers are swelling, and there is indeed a great deal of ranking going on, but not much rectitude. Principled exiles are one thing, opportunistic mid-career recalibration is quite another. Bradley is a study in political mobility. He has, within a single decade, voted Remain, resigned over Theresa May's Brexit plan, backed Boris Johnson, supported Liz Truss's imploding mini-budget, declared a climate emergency in Nottinghamshire, championed fiscal restraint, and now arrives in a party whose leading lights denounce environmentalism, lament immigration rules they voted for, promised cuts that cannot be delivered by councils already staring at bankruptcy. One struggles to detect a consistent ideological thread beyond the instinct to move towards whichever faction currently appears ascendant on the populist right. His official Reform UK role, Head of Government Action, sounds more like a job title devised for a departmental restructuring PowerPoint than a serious administrative post. Yet it reveals something essential about Reform's current predicament. The party won control of several councils in 2025 on a pledge to cut waste, reduce tax and restore efficiency. Once in office, they discovered what all councillors eventually learn. Councils have no money, no wriggle room, and no capacity to cut anything substantial without harming those services voters actually notice. Hence, the need for an efficiency czar, a role Bradley now occupies. The irony is rich. A party claiming to break with a failed establishment is recruiting the very people who built that establishment, placing them in charge of fixing problems they helped to create. It's not wholly unreasonable, experience matters, but it sits awkwardly beside Reform's new elite rhetoric. Nigel Farage has attempted to mitigate this by insisting that he needs people who know how government works, yet he also insists Reform is not becoming Conservative Party 2.0. These positions are not incompatible, but they are undeniably strained. Bradley's own defence is that trust in the Conservatives has evaporated and is not coming back. That is undoubtedly true in Mansfield, where he lost by a wide margin, and in the broader Midlands, where his mayoral hopes were extinguished by a 50,000 vote gulf. His opponents take a harsher view, describing his loyalty as interchangeable and his political convictions as variable. Birds of a feather flock together, as Labour's Steve Yem rather bluntly put it. The deeper point is this. Reform UK does not simply collect defectors, it reconstitutes the political right around a narrative of betrayal, and in this story, ex-Tory MPs are not fugitives from electoral defeat, they are initiates rescued from a party that lost its way. This is emotionally potent for the Conservative electorate drifting rightwards, but analytically fragile. If Reform wishes to embody a genuine break from the past, it must eventually produce leaders whose careers do not begin as Conservative apparatchiks. Bradley's arrival also illustrates another trend, Reform's hunger for national credibility through local government. Their problem is structural. National rhetoric wins attention, but local office exposes reality. Crumbling children's services cannot be rebuilt through slogans. Social care cannot be funded through audits alone. When councils run out of money, they raise council tax. And several Reform councils are already preparing 5% increases. Bradley will therefore become the face of a contradiction. The party that pledged to cut council tax may soon oversee some of the highest increases in England. His supporters argue that Bradley offers administrative skill. His critics note that he juggled 3 jobs simultaneously, shifted positions repeatedly, and is entering a party whose economic blueprint resembles a composite of Truss's optimism and Johnson's fiscal magic. Both assessments contain truth. He is capable, energetic, and adept at presenting himself as the local champion betrayed by national failure, yet he is also emblematic of a political culture that moves too quickly to blame the system when personal strategy falters. In short, Reform UK gains another ex-Tory, not because he represents a pure ideological vision or a beacon of integrity, but because the party needs bodies, experience, and recognisable names to buttress the impression of momentum. Bradley gains a platform he's lost. It's a marriage of convenience framed as a crusade. Whether it works will turn on a single question. Do voters see reform as a new force, or as the Conservative Party's restless subconscious, the wing that cannot forgive the collapse of Brexit-era illusions? If Bradley becomes a successful advocate for practical reform in local government, he may yet prove his critics wrong. If he becomes merely another defector shouting from the sidelines, the rankings will grow larger, but the party will not grow wiser. Either way, the trend is unmistakable. Reform UK is becoming the detention centre for disillusioned Conservatives, whether it's planned or not, ranking or otherwise.